Hello, and welcome to The Monster and the Child, where childhood studies and monster studies collide. I am Dr. Kathleen Kellett, and I am happy to welcome you to our second installment of Interview Weekend. Yesterday, I released an interview with middle grade horror author Ali Russell, who I met at an author event at Thriller-delphia, and was told about by horror writer and creative Wimoto Nyoka, all appropriate links in the description below. And at that same event, I met Laura Parnum, the author of Peril at Price Manor and The Haunting of Bellington Cottage. I have read and very much enjoyed the latter of those two novels, and her writing has also appeared in S'more Spooky Stories, a National Park anthology. So, love that too. I asked Laura the same set of questions that I asked Ali, so you can get two very cool perspectives on the whys and wherefores of writing monster stories for young people. Children's literature is my background and my greatest passion, so it was very exciting to discuss this topic with someone doing really cool work in that space. So once again, kindly overlooking the webcam quality, please enjoy this conversation with Laura Parnum. All right, so to begin with, please tell us a little bit about your books. Who are the kids and who are the monsters?
Yeah, so I'll start with Peril at Price Manor. I've got my copy right here. Peril at Price Manor is my sort of tribute to old B movie creature features. The kids are Hallie, Paisley, and Argyle. So Hallie is the true like heroine of the story. She loves horror movies and she loves them so much that she wants to be an actress in a horror movie when she gets older. So she practices all the things you need to do to be in horror movies, like screaming and fainting and running through the woods and tripping and falling. So, she's practicing. She wants to play the damsel in distress in horror movies. She gets this opportunity one day to go to Price Manor, which is the home of a famous horror movie maker, and she's, hoping she'll be discovered. So that's Maximus Price. He's, sort of this famous horror movie maker, but he's got two kids, Paisley and Argyle. So they are twins, and they are, they have led a very sheltered life. Their dad has been very overprotective of them, so they have this enormous household staff that does everything for them. So much so that they can't even like get their own snacks or, pick out what clothes they're going to wear and things like that. So they've led this sheltered life, but they also have their own skills as well. So Paisley is very athletic, and she's also very schedule oriented and rule oriented. So she's like, keeps everyone on track. And then Argyle is very smart. He reads a lot and he's very curious about the world around him, from which he's been sheltered from. So now the monsters of the book are these slimy tentacled creatures called tredecapuses, and they they are they need a host in order to reproduce. So they have been attacking the household staff. Um, so so they what they do is they have these tentacles. There's 13 of them, so they're called tredecapuses, and they don't have eyes or ears or noses, but they can sort of sense sound, probably sensing vibrations. And they can smell, so maybe there's a nose in there somewhere. But what they do is they can jump. They jump on the heads of people and sort of attach themselves and put those people into a zombie-like state, so that they're kind of walking around like zombies, unable to see or talk or communicate in any way. Um,
Incredible.
so so once they're attached to somebody and they sense a potential host nearby, they'll actually split in half, and another creature will come out and try to attack the next person. So, there's the potential that they could replicate uncontrollably and take
Mhm.
over the world, you know?
Yep.
So,
Classic problem to solve there.
right. So basically, Hallie uses all of her horror movie knowledge, and specifically her knowledge of how to survive dire circumstances. And then Paisley can use like her athletic abilities and her sort of regimented uh, uh, ways to sort of keep them in line. And Argyle uses his knowledge of animal behavior from all the books that he's read, so that they're all using their skills to sort of figure out how these creatures work and how to stop them. Um,
I love the
yeah,
the animal behavior bit that's like shades of Nope.
yeah, right, exactly. So that's Peril at Price Manor. Now I've got The Haunting of Bellington Cottage, which is the main character is Iris. She's the shorter one there, and she has a broken arm. And she's going on a ski trip with her family, but unfortunately, broken arm and ski trip don't really go together. So it turns out though that another family is going with them, and they have Violet, who Iris met a few years ago when their families got together for another vacation, and stayed at a rental house in Cape May, New Jersey. So Iris is excited to see Violet because the last time they got together, they turned that rental house into a haunted house to scare the grown-ups. So she wants to recreate that hilarious and fun time and make another haunted house even better and scarier than the first one. But unfortunately, when Violet arrives, she's changed. And she's, dyed her hair black, and she's very moody and grumpy. And she, insists on being called V instead of Violet. So she's changed her name. And, she kind of doesn't want to have anything to do with Iris or the haunted house. But then, of course, strange things start happening in the house, which make them realize that they don't need to make a haunted house because it actually is haunted. So this is my monster, the ghost, and I won't tell you too much about the ghost because it's sort of a mystery that the girls have to solve over the course of the story, who they are and what they want and how to help them. So the girls, have to set aside their differences to figure out what to do about this ghost. And of course, the parents all think that they're creating a haunted house. So any of these hauntings that happen, they're just, the girls are making this haunted house. So, there's lots of havoc wreaked on the rental house that the ghost is causing, and the girls are getting blamed for.
Yes. I've got my camera's so fuzzy, but I've got my little ghost earrings on.
Nice. Oh, and I also have my own little ghost here
Excellent.
to go with my tredecapus, so they're
I
there.
love that. Yeah, I so the latter book is the one that I've read, and I really liked how, and this kind of leads into my next question about middle grade. I really liked how one of the sort of central internal conflicts for Iris was like, are my friends all outgrowing me? It's like what a violent throwback to feeling 12.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I thought that was very well done.
Thanks.
All right, so that leads into do some of these questions a little bit out of order, but if you would like to define what middle grade means for any unfamiliar audiences, and then what made you want to put monsters into your middle grade.
Yeah, so middle grade is the books that fall in between. So there's, picture books and early readers or chapter books. Then there's middle grade, and then there's YA or young adult fiction. So specifically, middle grade is for kids around ages 8 to 12 or 13. And as the name suggests, it's for those middle grades. It's not middle school, which is like sixth, seventh, eighth grade, but it's more like the middle grades, third through sixth or seventh grade. Um, so with the different age categories, excuse me, picture books are generally like the books that parents read aloud to their kids, and illustration is a main part of the storytelling. Then you have the chapter books, or the early readers, which are a lot shorter than middle grade. So they have simpler sentences and simpler words. And they have often, some black and white illustrations throughout the book to sort of enhance the stories and keep the interest of those young readers who are just learning how to read.
Mm.
So middle grade is the books are getting longer, the reading level is higher, but it's not just about length and reading level because middle grade books often deal with like the themes that developmentally the readers that age are starting to go through. So themes like independence or themes like friendships and family relationships or coming of age and those types of themes. So it's not just about, the reading level or the
Mhm.
length, it's about the themes as well. And how I got to put monsters in my books? That's a good question. So I'll have to back up a little bit and tell you about my upbringing.
Yes.
So, when I was a kid, my dad loved horror movies and he was a collector. So he collected all kinds of memorabilia about horror movies. And we had a room in our house that was devoted to his horror movie collection. It had posters on, all the walls, posters on the ceiling, just covered in posters. He had some of the old classic ones, originals, and then he had, some newer ones, some current ones. He had books, magazines. He would make scrapbooks with like movie reviews and all kinds of things. And he had like little figurines and those little cardboard stands that you sometimes see in movie theaters and stuff like that. So, so basically, I grew up around monsters. And I would say that it was never really an intentional decision to put monsters in my books. It was just sort of what came out of me naturally
Yeah.
because, that's where I come from. That's what I know.
I mean, that makes sense. Definitely come by the horror genre, honestly. Um, okay, so on my channel, a lot of what I do is talk about stories and narratives that challenge social constructions of childhood. So are there any commonly held beliefs around childhood or about childhood that you hope to challenge through your work?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what I write about is sort of empowering kids, and the readers. I think that in like today's society, there's a lot of people who are trying to shelter kids, and I know I'm a little bit guilty of that myself with my own kids, because there's a lot of scary and unsettling things out there in the
Yeah.
world, in the country, in our communities. But I think that kids shouldn't always be sheltered or kept away from tough topics or upsetting realities, but that they should be given the knowledge along with the tools to sort of help cope with those and make their own decisions about what's right and wrong. So, so far, my books don't really tackle, tough societal issues at this time, but I know that there are lots of books for middle grade readers that do, and that they're, really it's really important for them to be able to access those books. Um, Scary books, I would say, also serve a particular role for kids, and that is, and there's actually been sort of studies about this, but when you're taking in like a fearful situation, but in a safe space. So like when you go to the movies, you're in a movie theater, right? When you read a book, you're, in your room or your living room, or you're in a safe space. And it actually, when you experience the sensations of fear in that safe space, it actually sort of helps the reader practice feeling their or it helps them develop their fear emotions and their fear
Mhm.
reflexes so that they can cope with sort of scary situations in real life. So that's my hope. My books aren't super scary, especially this one I tell people is more funny than scary. They get into a lot of wacky situations. This one's got a few more scares in it. But it's still not super scary.
Yeah, but not to, I'm going to avoid spoilers for it, but as the girls like discovers the backstory of the ghost, like there's some genuinely sad stuff in there. Like I was getting emotional reading it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that too, like kind of goes hand in hand, like allowing kids to like process hard emotions that like adults tend to want to shield them from, but it's good for them too, because you're not going to
Yeah.
be able to avoid fear or sadness. So it's good to have that sort of like working through it through art.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Experience all the emotions.
Yes. Uh, okay. So most of my audience, because most of what I do on my channel is like public scholarship, about children in monster stories, but not always like children's media.
Uh,
So like I'm working on a script right now about like It and Nightmare on Elm Street. So not really intended for kids, uh, but about kids. Um, so most of my audience is not the target demographic of your writing, but what would be your pitch for what an adult might get out of reading a middle grade novel if they haven't done so since they themselves were a kid?
Yeah, so I would say let's see, for Peril at Price Manor, it's definitely like if you're a horror movie fan, you'll find a lot of hidden references to classic horror and 80s horror movies. There's some Easter eggs in there that you'd only notice if you were a big fan of, of those movies.
Nice.
Um, the book was definitely written with my dad's love of horror movies in mind. And I think, readers who appreciate, terrible B movies and creature features and things like that will appreciate this book because it's sort of a tribute to that. Um, for The Haunting of Bellington Cottage, I think, it really focuses on the relationships and communication that can bring adult readers back to their preteen years and hopefully in a fun way and not a traumatic way.
Right. Yes,
Um,
yes.
because we all navigated those awkward moments and the relationship struggles that we had then. And I think that also the readers who have their own kids of this age, if they're reading, if the adult readers are reading, they might be able to put themselves in the shoes of the characters and what they're going through and help them see what their own kids are going through in terms of friendships and relationships. Both books I would also say have really cool settings. So Peril at Price Manor is in this old stone mansion, and it's in the woods, and it's kind of got this Tim Burton-esque, like creepy aesthetic, which is all completely manufactured because Maximus Price, who owns the mansion, has, he's got like fog machines running, and he's got like, all these props from his movies that are around the house, and so he's sort of built this like home that's that's almost a horror movie setting itself. And then Bellington Cottage is this another old stone house that, has a bit of creepiness. What it has is the taxidermy, which is very unusual. It's got, like two-tailed squirrels and a three-eyed owl that's sort of hanging in front of the door. So the settings are, both weird and whimsical and, a lot of fun for readers of any age.
Yes, definitely. This apropos of nothing, but it made me remember a ski trip that my family went on when I was probably around the age of the characters. And it was a small, weird, old, mostly empty hotel. And in the like recreation area, it had one of those claw machines that was just entirely full of Chucky dolls.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
so so I could relate to
Wow.
the creepy ski trip very much.
Great.
Oh, okay. What are some things that you think frighten kids the same age as the characters you write? Um, and what frightened you when you were that age?
Okay, so my characters they're all 12. Makes it easy. And I think 12-year-olds, they're not as afraid of sort of irrational monster type things because they've sort of outgrown that
Mhm.
era. They're more grounded in reality. So, they're not going to be afraid of the boogeyman or, whatever. But so I remember when I was a young child, I was afraid of, I thought that Bigfoot lived in my parents' closet at the end of the hall.
Sure.
So I was always kind of afraid to go past that hallway to get to my room. Um, and I was also afraid of house fires and burglars, which are more real problems that
Right.
do exist in the world
Then
than
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. Yeah, but he didn't live in my parents' closet. Um, then at 12, I think I had outgrown my fear of fires because it wasn't really something that was happening a lot in the community. People's houses didn't just burst into flames and burn down, but um, but I was still afraid of there were people that we know whose houses were broken into. Our house was broken into a couple times. We lived in the city, and I knew people who had been assaulted. I was once surrounded by a group of bigger kids on bikes who took my money, and that was very scary. So I think those were my, sort of external fears, but then there are also a lot of internal fears, which I think, my books deal with too. So the internal fears of, not being accepted and friendships changing, bullying, or being made fun of just for, something trivial like wearing the wrong brand of shoes or something like that. And those fears are definitely real fears too, that I include in my books, and that I think, all kids, whether you live in the city or not, experience these types of fears. And I think this is like a forever thing. It's those fears aren't going to go away over time. I mean, I mean, like in the future, those fears will
Right,
still
right,
be.
right. Yeah, hopefully for an individual they will, but
Right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that like and this is something that I've been thinking about because I've been working on the script for my It video. Like adults really revise their memories a lot of the experience of being like a young adolescent. Um, and just I think there's a lot of value in like remembering what it actually felt like.
Uh-huh.
Because the impulse oftentimes I feel like is for adults to be like, oh, it's not actually that big a deal, but like it is when you're 12.
Mhm. I think I have very strong memories of that period of my life, which probably makes it, easier for me to write about, kids of that age. Because I don't remember things that happened to me last week, but I sure do remember, what happened to me in seventh grade, you know. So yeah, yeah. And I know that we all have different memory capacities. So there are definitely um issues that kids face that adults don't don't understand because
Mhm.
they've sort of lost the memory of those traumatic things from their own childhood, maybe for
Yeah.
the better.
Right. I mean, it's you sort of like, as you said, grow past them, and then sort of in your own mind, you're like, oh, well, it was actually okay, like because you know the ending. But when you're in the thick of it, when you're actually in seventh grade, it's hard to see past.
Yeah,
Um,
sure is.
all right, you already answered this a bit, but if you want to elaborate, what monster stories were the most formative to you, especially in your own childhood?
Yeah, so I like to tell the story about when my dad took me and my sister to our first horror movie. Um, my my memories of monster stories are a lot about movies rather than books, because that's
Yeah.
that was kind of forced upon me. But yeah, so my dad took us to see our first horror movie. It was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Amazing.
Um, and so my dad was a big Frankenstein's monster fan. I have his copy. I don't know if you can see it, but I have his autograph from Boris
Uh,
Karloff over there. Anyway,
Amazing. That's amazing.
so anyway, so I'm sure in my dad's mind he thought we would love this movie too. So he took us and the movie starts and there's all kinds of scary music starting right away. And I think within the first 5 or 10 minutes, there's a werewolf transformation scene, and
Mm,
my sister and I, we were like 4 and 5 years old, and we just couldn't handle it. And he had to take us out of the movie theater because we were crying or whatever.
right.
So it's a little bit of a disappointment for him. Um, but I definitely like monsters since they were sort of a constant presence for me as a child. I did develop, this appreciation for them. I remember in third grade, I was cast as the witch in Hansel and Gretel.
Nice.
So that was really exciting for me. Um, we watched scary movies at like sleepovers and birthday parties and things like that. Probably, my sister and I were definitely more able to handle some of them other over our friends who weren't as, exposed.
Yeah.
But I do remember that Freddy Krueger was a hard one for me because, I definitely saw it too young. I don't know how old I was, but I was definitely too young to watch Nightmare on Elm Street. And of course, the whole premise is that he'll kill you in your dreams.
Right.
So, I'm not going to sleep now after watching that movie. And of course, so I would be up late at night and my dad would have to deal with me because my mom wasn't going to deal with me. She's not a horror movie fan. It wasn't her fault that I was up all night. Um, but actually, by the time the third Nightmare on Elm Street came out, I was pretty hooked. And I think, I love that movie. I think it's the best one of the bunch. But also, just I think just having the constant exposure really sort of well, like we were saying about fear, being practicing fear in a safe space,
Yeah.
helps you develop those fear muscles. And so, so by that point, I was all over horror movies. Yeah, so those are my favorite monster stories growing up. Yeah.
I love that. I love that your dad was like, "It's Abbott and Costello. It'll be fine."
Right.
Yeah. Um, and then my last question is, what is your personal favorite monster? And this can either be like a specific character or just like a type of monsters like werewolves or something?
Yeah, so my favorite monster is the xenomorph from Alien, the Alien
That's such a good
movies.
one. Yeah.
I love it because like it's one monster, but it goes through all these different phases. So you have the egg, and it kind of like flops open with this sort of slimy sound that I can still hear, like you know. And then of course out comes the face hugger, which is very much similar to my tredecapus. It's it does that. So
Yeah.
and then there's the chest burster, which is like, this tiny pale colored version of the adult, but that it makes this violent entrance into the world, like, psh. And then of course there's the it grows very quickly into this sleek and shiny adult that has like this double jaw and a vicious lethal tail. So yeah, I do have a lot of questions about the xenomorph. Like, what does it eat? You never see it
Mhm.
eating. And how
Yeah.
does it grow so fast when you don't see it eating? Um, but I also like them because they're not evil. They're just trying to survive and reproduce. And
Yeah.
they're not, killing people just for the heck of it. They're just creatures like any of us that are trying to survive. But that it's a lot of times it's the human characters that can be good or evil, and those characteristics come to light when when they're faced with the creature.
Yes. Yeah. How in several of my videos I pointed this out because monster scholars can't resist the fact that like the root of the word monster is like to reveal. Um
Ah.
so that's exactly what it does. It reveals the character and the goings on and the secrets all around it.
Yeah, and I think that when I include like monsters in my books, the monsters, the purpose, of course, isn't evil. Like that's not what they're there for. So
Mhm.
in, Peril at Price Manor, the creature is very, similarly to the xenomorph, it's there to reproduce and survive. And it might do so out of control, but it really helps to make the characters, it puts them in a situation where they have to um, have some sort of developmental growth. So yeah, Hallie, she thinks of herself as the damsel in distress, and she has to learn to be the heroine. Um, and then Paisley and Argyle, they've lived this sheltered life. They have to learn to be independent. So the creature sort of is there as like a ways for the characters to develop and the same is true for The Haunting of Bellington Cottage, which I mentioned is like about communication. And Iris is having a lot of trouble with communication. So she's not only is she sort of dealing with V, who is being, distant and cold, but her best friend from school has just moved away, and so she's dealing with this loss of a friend. Um, and the way she deals with it at first isn't the best way. She's a little bit manipulative, a little bit, she's sort of playing games. Um, and when they meet the ghost, she they have to learn to communicate with this ghost.
Mhm.
So the theme of communication is really it's kind of mirrored in the ghost and in Iris because they're both trying to figure out how to communicate. So I kind of use the monsters as a way to help the characters go through their own emotional growth.
I love that. I feel like that's also the story of my life. Just emotional growth through monsters.
What monsters are helping you grow?
Oh, all of them. I mean, my favorite monsters are werewolves.
Uh-huh.
I love the hybridity. I love the versatility of a werewolf. It can sort of mean whatever you want it to, in whatever story.
Yeah.
But I feel like just I did my dissertation study on monster stories, and I worked with teen readers, so a little bit older. But just like getting to know their ideas about what's important to young people in this day and age, and like exploring that through what they find monstrous. It's just such a useful metaphor for like figuring out what's important to you, what you think is like uh what makes humanity. And
Yeah.
I think just over the years I've had a lot of personal growth through monster stories.
Yeah, yeah. And there's just even, the older monster movies, there's often, that something else that's going on that's sort of represented, not maybe not by the monster, well, sometimes by the monster,
Mhm.
but you think of all the zombie movies, and the
Mhm.
zombie movies and books are, there's this terrible thing happening. How does humanity react to it? How does
Yes.
society react to it? So yeah, it's a lot about the regular human characters and what they're going through, that sort of get told through the monster situation or the
Yeah.
monster themselves. Yeah.
And also the stories that allow you to have like sympathy for the monster,
Uh-huh.
to sort of exercise that like uh not always believing the bad hype around something, actually like seeing what the real situation is. I remember my early Frankenstein trauma was I was older than you were when you saw The Abbott and Costello, but probably like nine-ish, and saw my dad showed me the old 1931 Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And the scene where he's with the little girl, and then they're throwing the flowers in the water, and then he throws her in the water, and then she dies. I
Yeah.
was inconsolable.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
was like, he didn't know, he didn't understand, it's not his fault.
It's very traumatic. It's
Yeah.
very sad. Yeah,
And
yeah.
when
Poor.
everyone's going after him, I'm like, they just don't understand. They're not taking the time to understand him.
Yeah, and I
And,
think
that sort of set me on this path, I think.
and that was the movie where the monster was getting beaten, right? By was it
Yeah.
Fritz, the assistant?
Oh yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I did see it, oh God, probably like the better part of 10 years ago now. But I was struck by how like still so upsetting it is. Like
Mhm.
it's like 90 minutes long, made in the early 30s, and it's still so well done. Like
Yeah,
classic
yeah,
for a reason.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for all our viewers who haven't seen those movies recently or at all, check them
Yes.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. Go watch the classics. They really hold up, a lot of them. All right, so those are all of my questions for you. Again, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for inviting me on. And yeah, I look forward to our paths crossing again sometime in the future.
Thank you again to Laura for this fun and fascinating interview. Make sure you follow the links below to her website and to go purchase her books. It's really exciting to me that there are high quality spooks for kids out there, and I love the chance to support that wherever I can. And if I know my audience, I imagine you do as well. Drop a comment about some of your own favorite childhood monster stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can join in the conversation. Tomorrow, I will be back with my last interview of the weekend, this time with two of the participants from my doctoral dissertation study, Monster Book Club. We will talk all about their experiences reading and sharing their thoughts about monsters with a group of peers, and then you will learn more about how you can help me create more of those opportunities for young people. I can't wait to share this with you. My dissertation study was such an incredible experience for me, and I'm so grateful that it was for the participants as well. So take care, and I will see you tomorrow for more monstrous food for thought.